a team sort of, I'm wondering if we're going to wind up like kind of copying, pasting that bit for the next one, but it's a team in a very similar set of circumstances, which is a lot of S sounds that I said quickly, where you got a team that has sort of developed an identity, established who it wants to be. It starts on the defensive end and it starts with a lot of young talent. Say something nice to me about the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, I kind of think Jamal Mosley should win Coach of the Year. Like, to have whatever they are. Like, I think they're like the fourth youngest team and the fourth best defense or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact numbers. I haven't checked in the last week or so, but that's incredible, especially when you consider that guys like, Paolo and Franz coming into the league weren't necessarily thought of as like elite kind of defenders. When they got Wendell Carter and Mo Wagner as their centers, who aren't necessarily traditional like rim protector types, but the way that they defend on a string, the way that they are able to cut off drives it's really impressive. The way that they're sort of systematized on defense and the way they execute within what Mosley wants them to do is really impressive. They lost guys for significant stretches of the season. They basically haven't had any guards other than Jalen Suggs healthy for the entire year. And I mean, like, Suggs is up there with Amen Thompson for me in terms of my favorite guys to watch. Like, it's like a guy built picture perfect for me to love watching him.
Yeah.
It's just, I find a lot of really things nice about the Magic.
Well, who needs guards? I mean, the entire premise of the Orlando Magic is like, what if we build the whole plane out of huge, long guys that can do a little bit of everything? And then the guards are kind of like, yeah, if they come along, great. But like, we're mostly just going to be gigantic. And they've, over the last couple of years, they've decided this is a real interesting wrinkle for the Magic over the last 15 or so years. What if those guys could score? What if those guys could do stuff with the ball in their hands? And that's like a really interesting wrinkle they've added. I think to me, and I know it's a little bit of it's becoming an easy talking point, but I love easy talking points because I talk and sometimes I have a hard time with it. The fact that they've learned how to really leverage Paolo Banchero's passing, like his scoring, to open things up for passing. And I'm thinking specifically of the way he works out of the post. Like, he understands now, like, if you get a mismatch there, if they're able to work, getting him off a cross screen and he's able to set up on the block, he's good enough that he can overpower guys to get to the basket. He can, turn around, face up and shoot over the top. And he knows now, like, he's been good enough at that for a year and a half, almost 2 years, that teams are starting to show more help at him and throw more doubles at him when he gets there, in part because they don't believe, as we mentioned, like the guards, the shooting around him, like, all right, make those guys beat us. Well, he's doing that. He's making those reads earlier. He's making the feeds more. And you've got more of those guards and those wings like moving around the arc, understanding if we get into a good spot, he will find us. He's averaging 6 assists a game since January 1st. Like, that is a level up significantly over where he was last year when he was the Rookie of the Year. And if you have that guy who's creating an advantage and then spraying it out and sharing it, some of those looks are a little bit easier when you're catching them in rhythm. You're catching them with a little bit more space before the closeout defender. And that's where, Jalen Suggs making the advancements that he's made as a 3-point shooter. Cole Anthony is a guy that can catch and shoot a lot more, even Franz being able to catch, but then also beat a closeout, get downhill. Like, there are just more ways for you to win when you've already got the advantage created. And now you're looking at how do you extend it. And to me, that's just it is indicative, as you said, of Jamal Mosley, the great job he's done on the coaching, not just on the defensive end, but also don't tell me so much about what these guys can't do. Let me see what I can make out of what we do have and what they can do. And it does feel a little bit like he's getting the most out of them. On the offense has not been elite. Obviously, that's going to be their big concern. But even on that end, they're sort of trending up that way more recently. I think they're above average on offensive efficiency since the All-Star break. I think like 10th in the half court. They're generating more corner threes. Like, they're figuring out answers to the ways teams guard them. And then, I mean, whether that holds up in a playoff series, I don't know. But if you would have told me, beginning of last season or midway through last season, we're going to be finding out pretty soon what the Magic do in a playoff series, I would have thought you were nuts. So to get here this early feels like a real big win organizationally.
Definitely. And I'm glad you brought up Paolo's passing. It's coincidentally something I'm putting in my 3 things I noticed on League Pass for tomorrow.
All right. We're noticing.
Because, I think he had like the best passing game of his career against New Orleans last week. And specifically the kind of stuff you mentioned, like passing out of a double from the post. One time in each half, he got that and he just like whipped a one-handed pass across the court over the top of two helpers to a guy who was getting like a hammer screen in the corner. And, Gary Harris made it. And I think Gary Harris missed it and Jalen Suggs made it in the second half. But both of them were just like incredible passes. And then a few of them like on pocket passes to Wendell Carter or the pick and roll, or finding guys like, jump passes are good now. Thanks to
shouts out to Caitlin Cooper and our friend Tyrese Halliburton. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and he made a few of those in that game as well. Like, I remember before the All-Star break, I was like, I kind of think Franz has outplayed Paolo to this point in the season, and I think since then, like since maybe like a week or two before the All-Star break, Paolo has taken it to a completely different level. And he did have that one stretch like where Franz was out early in the year and he was posting ridiculous numbers for a week and a half. But then as the absence went on and as like Carter was out and, Fultz was out, and like, I don't know how many guys they've had out at different times this year, but it sort of seemed like he sort of crumbled under the weight of having to do everything for a couple weeks. And I kind of think it helped him. Like, so much of the discourse about the Magic has been how they need more playmakers and they need, like a real point guard. Asking Paolo and Franz to do so much creating has sort of helped them level up their creating. And you brought up, they've always had these, big, long, athletic guys, and it's just none of them have been able to create. Like the guys that are in the front office there, Jeff Hammond and John Hammond and Jeff Weltman, have both come from organizations where they really valued big, long, athletic guys in the Bucks and the Raptors. The Raptors tried to build a similar sort of team where it was all big, long, athletic guys, but the big issue with them since Kawhi left was they didn't have anybody to create advantages for anybody else. So they couldn't score in the half court. And now like the Magic are building that sort of team, and they have two guys that can create those sort of advantages. Like, they're not elite level creators yet necessarily, but they're on their way to getting there. And that's like, it's really impressive for them. It's really impressive for the coaching, and it's really impressive to be able to get what they're able to get out of the talent they have on hand, given they do have deficiencies.
Absolutely. And we'll move off of it in a second, but I just love that idea of if someone gives you a toolbox, or you find one in the apartment as you move into it, and it's like, well, all there is in here is a hammer. Like, and you can be like, well, it sucks to not have a screwdriver and a wrench. Or you can be like, I'm going to use this friggin' hammer. And what the Magic do is they use the friggin' hammer. They're like, we're going to take like 45% of our shots at the basket. Paolo is a guy who's going to draw fouls. We're going to use that, him and Franz is hammering the paint to get to the line. This is what we're going to build. And maybe it's not going to be enough to win several playoff series because we're going to need a little bit more shooting. We're going to need a little bit more creativity or whatever. But like, turns out you can get an awful long way just hammering stuff. Like you can fix a lot of stuff and you can break a lot of stuff with just the hammer. So like, shouts out to the Magic for finding a way to look at a toolbox that only had one thing in it, or what seemed like it only had one thing in it, and get to fighting for home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. Freaking crazy. But I'm fascinated to see how they're gonna net out in a postseason series, because I think they're going to take a pound of flesh out of whoever they play. I don't know if that's going to be enough for them to advance, but I think they're going to get to learn a lot about themselves and how teams are going to defend them, whether they've got enough juice to be able to beat it, and we'll go from there.